All right, cool deal. Well, it looks like we've got a pretty good amount of people in here. Just go ahead and kick off for the housekeeping stuff. My name is Tyler. I'm on the marketing team here at Instruct. And with that, I'm gonna bow myself off stage and pass it over to TJ to introduce everybody.
Thank you, Tyler. And it's exciting today to introduce Ravi and Harsh here from Harness. We've got a great story to tell. I'm TJ Randall. I run the customer success organization here at Instruqt. And if you're not familiar, Instruqt is a flexible hands-on lab experience for training, workshops, for go-to-market strategies, instructor-led training, which we're going to cover here today. And really, at the end of the day, it helps you engage in multiple ways and reach engineers through kind of immersive education. So with that said, let's get to the real meat of the matter, so to speak. And let's kick it off. Ravi, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you do for Harness?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, CJ. Yeah, excited to be on here on the webinar. I'm excited to be on with Harsh also from my team. So I'm Ravi. I get the opportunity to lead the product education team here at Harness. And so kind of a little background. Kind of a newer team here at Harness. We've taken a very engineering-centric approach to education. We're kind of tasked with coordinating Harness's education charter, and so we want to make sure that to be totally transparent, like, hey, we sell engineering products, right, and we sell development products, and so there's infinite possibility there. How do we make sure that people with varying levels of skills and either they're voluntold to use our product, or they were told to do it, or they on their own accord they use it? How do we make sure that everybody is successful? And my background, I've been a software engineer for a while, been a product manager, and currently in the role I'm in, I'm leading education. So I'd love to introduce Harsh also. Harsh.
Hey, everyone. So my name is Harsh Vyas. I'm from Boston. I'm on the education team here, product education team under Ravi, and a really exciting thing that we have at Harness is to build this experience for our students to learn the Harness platform, and I get to architect it and build it on top of Instruqt, which has really made the whole process very fulfilling for me as a developer, building this, as well as also teaching it to the students that want to learn Harness. So excited to share with all of you the work that we've been doing.
Excellent. Thank you both. So today we have a 45-minute session. We have a lot to go through today. So we're going to talk a little bit about, first and foremost, what Harness is and why do customers choose it, as well as what's the evolution of Harness University. And that, I think, is a key part of the story that Ravi and team has really built out, as well as we're going to have some discussion on best practice. And we got a great demo. Harsh has something lined up to showcase something pretty darn interesting. So let's go ahead. Let's dive in. And Ravi, why don't you talk a little bit about Harness itself? Why do enterprise customers choose Harness, and where do you and your team fit in?
Yeah. So just so that has us up in the slide there, we're the modern software delivery platform. So Harness, if you're unfamiliar with Harness, we focus on software delivery. So anything that you need to do to go from idea to production. So we have multiple solutions. We have 12. We have a couple more coming out that we range anywhere from source code management to CI, which is your build, CD to deploy. And we have several other modules that are kind of front in mind of people. For example, we have engineering efficiency or developer experience modules that are top of mind for a lot of our customers today. We also have some forward-facing things like chaos engineering. How do you make sure your software is more robust? And basically, we package all of these capabilities. And what's really what education is so important, that any one of these capabilities you could build your entire career on. Like, I could potentially build an entire career on chaos engineering, or I can build an entire career on just like, hey, how do I make the delivery pipeline more efficient? Even we have a cloud cost management product. I can build an entire career in FinOps, right? And so, like, with all of these capabilities we're bringing to the forefront for end users to use, how do we teach them to use it? Because a lot of times people are, like, hey, we want to be able to save money in our cloud costs, but I'm no FinOps expert. Or, hey, you know what? I want to deliver software more efficiency, or deploy more efficiently, but I'm not an expert in CD. And so this is where we, like, on the product education team, fit in, that we personify the end user. So, like, let's personify a platform engineer or personify a DevOps engineer. Like, how would he or she acquire these skill sets across a wide platform of capabilities? And it's actually a very critical task that we have here at Harness, because as we continue to grow, we're exposed to more and more people who, like, if you're familiar with the technical marketing, the chasm, a lot of the early adopters are out of the way. We're getting into more of a majority stake now here, and when you get to majority stake, brings a lot more people with varying levels of experience, right? The early adopters or the innovators, like they're like gung ho about learning, but then you get to kind of the middle ground, that the average person, and how do we educate them? How do we excite them? And this is core to our product education mission here at Harness.
And I think that, I mean, as we've been working together, one of the things that I've seen from your team, like with the courses that Harsh is building, is you really are seeking to create a true engagement experience. It's not just to learn where the widgets are, but you really want to be passionate. Your team is passionate about showcasing the power of how this can work, and teams can adopt it. So is that something that's just kind of naturally on the team? Is that kind of like a focus?
I think kind of we have, like, this is our third rendition of Harness University. Like jumping ahead in the conversation, like the very first rendition of Harness University was like a 20-page Google Doc that I made. And I mean, imagine how unsophisticated that was. When I first started Harness, there was less than 100 of us. We're like, hey, you know what? We need to kind of teach people some things. It was more internal focus. Like we started hiring more than a couple SEs. So we had a core group of like 3 SEs. We hired like 4 and 5. So the engineers, so it's like, well, we need to enable folks internally, technically, and then we can, what we're doing internally, we can scale it externally. But again, it was a 20-page Google Doc, and half the instructions were how do you access AWS into an account that I would create and delete everybody, out of resources. And it was getting kind of pricey. I get the bill every month on my credit card. I'm like, oh, we spent, like $900 again. Like, how did this occur? Kind of where, kind of like between the second and third rendition is that, the second rendition was a little bit more education focused. And so we had instructional design, or not instructional designers, but folks who have more of a discipline in education. But what ended up happening through that kind of like that transition period is that we started to notice that our products are pretty technical, right? Like, there was a disconnect between, hey, the education material that was being produced versus like what the end user actually needed. And kind of when I was brought in to kind of lead this, I would say V3 of Harness University, a couple of things maybe in my background, like one, like I didn't really take really well to training. Like if you look at me going through training, I'm clicking like next, let's get this over with. Or sometimes like, oh, this training is not very relevant, or like, hey, like who is this trainer? Like being polite, like he's like, okay, sure, like let's get this. But when we reformed the team, through like beginning of the calendar year, as that kind of our persona on the team is like Harsh. Like Harsh is a seasoned architect, right? So Harsh is a principal architect in his previous role. And so if we have folks who actually implemented these type of engagements before, like instead of starting with education first, why don't we start with a practitioner first? And then how would we like to teach our peers, right? And that's kind of where Instruqt really came in, because we like learning, or making a blanket statement, like for this type of technical tooling, academia only goes so far. You need to learn by doing, and learn by also trial and error. Like if you a little bit more on the soapbox here as a software engineer, I'll sum up like probably 15 years of experience. Software is written by trial and error, right? Like if I get something right the first time, it's probably wrong. Like I learned that after like years and years of experience. And kind of same thing, like you want to make sure that you're experimenting, you're learning. It's like teaching anybody. Like hands-on is it's for our type of work and tooling, it's very substantial. And this is where the investment with Instruqt came in. That I get the opportunity to take the classes that my team produces, and even I learn stuff about the platform I never learned about before, and I get excited and giddy. And I was like, wow, I didn't know we could do that, or oh, this feature's finally out. I didn't realize that. And so it's really connecting the dots. And in this current rendition of Harness University, like I don't have to talk about numbers or whatnot, but we've gained pretty significant traction in our certifications, and also in our like Instructor-Led training that we're the more elaborate stuff we're building. So perfect. There is a slide to this. So
and one of the things, go ahead, I'm sorry.
So in kind of our third rendition of training, which we're in right now, or in education, we offer 3 main capabilities, and all of this is powered with Instruqt. So we do certifications, right? So it's like it is a knowledge check, right? Like, hey, we do say that, hey, if you answer n number of questions correctly, that you have understanding of Harness. But where we pushed the bounds, and when our first kind of engagement with Instruqt is that we have 3 levels of certifications. We have a developer level certification, which it's question and answer. There are about 50 questions. If you can you pass that without using the product? Maybe, you can retry, you can kind of learn academically. The questions are all based in documentation. So like if you like to study, you can pass. Now where it gets harder is that we wanted to make sure that our the people who were kind of at firms that were purchasing harness, or people who wanted to gain the skills at the administrator level or architect level, that they were the folks actually looking at starting to implement harness or scale harness out. So we want to make sure we validate their learning with hands-on exercises. And like anything, like Harsh can tell you, he's AWS SA certified, but he had to drive to a Proctor Center to take the exam, right? And when we get that experience, I was very stalwart on, we need to make it easy, lower the barrier entry. Like, we want to make sure that people can take these exams at any time. And because we have a global footprint of customers and folks, we also want to make sure that one of the, just looking towards other institutions like the Linux Foundation, if you take a CKA or CKD, is that you get feedback pretty much immediately if you passed or not, right? Versus like when I used to work at Red Hat, someone had to grade it. You have to wait a week or two for an SA to come back and say, hey, Ravi, you took a lot of shortcuts in the REL exam there, but you barely passed. And I was like, wow, it took me a month to figure that out, right? But we want to provide instant feedback if people pass, and also it helps us scale other parts of our organization, other parts of our partner org, other parts of the ecosystem quicker. And that was a lot of our sophistication with Instruqt, is that Harness is a SaaS, and we're able to grade folks. EA, give them an ephemeral account. We're able to grade what they're doing via API calls we make in Instruqt in our checkout scripts, and provide a score saying, hey, you know what, you passed, right? But then challenges are pretty good. But overall, our CSAT scores have been pretty good, in my opinion, for people. You always get feedback like, hey, this question might not make sense, or hey, I struggled here, but we make adjustments. But the overall experience, people tend to smile and say, hey, this is pretty good. We took it at home. We didn't have to drive anywhere. We got instantly know if we passed or not, and it was challenging in a good way. Like it was they took it again. They learned stuff when they took the exam. So, and then we get into Instructor-Led training, which it's that but times 10. That we leverage the Instruqt platform to actually deliver these day-long trainings. So part of the problem with when we saw that we need Instructor-Led training. This is the problem that we solve. So again, development tooling, there's infinite ways to do anything. Core development or engineering is innovation and trial and error. And because we have a certain level of opinion, but even that opinion, you can override it in most of the Harness platform. It's how do you deliver, the software we sell is for people who are building experiences for other people. So it's we're the conduit of innovation for a lot of companies. And with that responsibility, it could be a different way of thinking for a lot of folks. If it's going back to kind of quintessential a decade ago, people really didn't deploy software more than maybe a couple times a year if they were good. Today, it's kind of like bulk of our customers are deploy on demand. So they can deploy multiple times a day to production. They can deploy whatever, every month, every week, every day, every hour if they care to. And that kind of shifts the way how you have to think. And so when we go and when we deliver Instructor-Led training, this will sound funny. When in version 1 of Harness University, when it was that 20-page Google document, you would be surprised. This is only in 2020, right? Version 1 launched in 2020, so we're only 4 years into this entire journey here at Harness. I was surprised by the number of people who didn't know how to use a terminal, when I taught a class, or hey, you know what? Our company blocks port 22. I'm like, that's SSH. How are they blocking that on your machine? We need to interact with the platform, and that was a big problem. But now we make it so easy. And later, Harsh will show what our experience looks like. Is that we're giving a student a full developer environment. They get an ephemeral Harness account. They get an IDE. They get a Kubernetes cluster. They get a container registry. They get an SDM, private SDM for themselves. And we're teaching them how to validate the experience that they're building, and also how to build the experience all in a web browser. It is very low friction. Everyone has a browser. Right? If they don't, they're on the mainframe somewhere. But most people are able to interact very well, and we're able to scale, right? So everybody kind of sees the same thing when they start. All the kind of complicated lab management that we would have to do with other solutions, or even ourselves, had to do it manually. That's kind of gone. It's done by the browser with Instruqt, and it's been pretty substantial for us to kind of scale this up.
And one of the things, Harsh, that you had said when we were talking a little bit about this as we prepared was you do a lot of the Instructor-Led training side, and you had made a comment about how customers felt really comfortable going into the certification because you were providing that mixture of best practice as well as experimentation. And so how do you think about that? How do you kind of thread that needle to make sure you're kind of getting them ready for the certification side?
Yeah, so our main audience is the developer persona, and the uh, persona that we tackle from a training perspective is like we want to make them as comfortable in their day-to-day tooling that they're already using. So we're providing that experience within the Instruct platform, which allows us to give them all the system tools like code registry, code repo, a container registry, and IDE, all that, with the ability for them to learn our product, which is Harness, and allowing them to be very flexible in terms of like what they can do. Like it's a very controlled environment, so they can pretty much break things without feeling the the burden of like, okay, who's gonna tap on my shoulder here, right? So like it's like a safe space for them to experiment different things within the platform. There are many ways of doing the same thing in our product, as well as the workflows that the developers have. So it's a practitioner level experience that we are providing, and now that requires different types of experimentation. So we get them comfortable to go to the next phase after the training is done with the certification, feeling very confident that like, hey, they've tested the tires as they felt it to be, and it's not very restrictive. It's not just click ops or clicking through things, but it's like really learning and understanding why is it that we have something in the product and how it matches to their current workflows that they have in their organization.
That makes sense. And one thing I think that Harness has done really well is you've expanded across multiple teams, which is also another challenge in education. Sometimes people think of it very singular, like I'm just training engineers, or I'm just training this. How like what's the secret to the success there? Like how did you think about that when you were thinking about different lines of business?
Yeah, I think it's like build it, they would come kind of mentality. Like we had so many like training or teaching someone how to do something like pretty technically, it is challenging. Like what Harsh was digging in on right there is that we also are training people how to make automation, right?
Yeah.
Like we're teaching them with technologies that they might not have touched before. Like we're extremely Terraform heavy in our labs, right? Like we have someone do something by the UI, then we immediately show them how to do that in Terraform, because it's like kind of the like, hey, you know what, your peers are all doing this via an IAC. You need to learn how to do this via IAC. Like contemporary tools that they have purchased in our class, they most likely have automated in a certain way. So we're actually moving forward a lot of that automation conversation, because previously it would be like, week 5, week 6 in an engagement. They're getting that like in the first day with us saying, hey, we're going to teach you what you will need to do soon. Like, and you can just do it with us. We might not teach you how to automate exactly what you're doing, but you at least know how to automate so you can fill in the middle. Right. And going back to your question, TJ, on how do we start scaling into other teams, is that, when we started small with certifications, there was a mandate that our technical like SAs and SEs would have to take level certifications, but they kind of liked it, saying, hey, if you're able to do this by testing somebody, like, why don't we teach people on this? And then part of our experimentation, when we were looking at, and we built the first couple of these courses, or these like 2-day long courses, word kind of got out saying, this is much easier, because there was internal competition too. So in previous role, I used to run the DevRel team here at Harness, and so kind of making my way into education. The kind of portion of this is that because of like internal competition, people start making their own like very bespoke ways of doing it, even like mimicking like V1 of like 2020. Like, hey, you have to invite somebody, you have to go spin up your own infrastructure, right? How do you manage an account? How do you invite students to the account? And we've solved all of those platform things. Like our team is kind of pivoting in a good way, that we're imagine us as a platform engineering team for education. Like we provide the bits and pieces. And so because we've done some of the kind of the more, I would say, complicated things. A good example is, and this, I don't know if we're talking about this later, Harness is a SaaS. We are a SaaS company. We have on-prem versions of our software, but if you're looking at one of the challenges that we had was like, well, how do we like on demand invite users that, I remember when I used to run these courses, I would have to get a roster, and I have to go and literally in like an Excel file and like make sure everyone's in the CSV, and then invite everybody one at a time. And then like 5 people wouldn't show up, and then like 6 other people would show up. Like, you didn't register. Like, now I got to stop and like invite you and like, like your spam filter. We solved that. Like once you enter Instruqt, we solved it that we made a single sign-on experience. So we have a fake SSO provider that will automatically provision a temporary user account with a random ID in Harness. You interact with that it's presented to you in Instruqt, and then when you exit, you get deleted or you get we clean up after that. But like solving those problems, like other teams are facing the same problems that we face, and they're like, oh, now they're saying, hey, you know what, the education team solved that. Why don't we start using more and more of Instruqt, so we don't have to worry about students don't have access to install a Kubernetes cluster locally in their machine, or they don't have access, like exactly the same problems we ran into running these workshops in 2020. They were just running into it now.
Yeah.
And because of that, we have other teams using it. So we have our sales engineering team using it. We have the DevRel team using it for public classes. We'll be teaching in a public format in our upcoming Unscripted conference. And so like totally like on demand, like people at lunch will just kind of log on their laptop. We don't know who's going to be there and just run through one of these exercises with us. And so that's kind of build it. They would come. We did. We, because of our everybody on the team has an engineering background. So we kind of decided, let's treat it like a platform engineering thing. We made certain things extensible. We opened up some of our kind of APIs that we built, and it's been pretty good, receptive to the company. So it's been good.
That's interesting, though. It's a great approach in terms of making sure that you have everything you need technically to teach in terms of experientially. And what is the level of investment for Harness University, and how are you guys measuring ROI? Like, what does that look like in the back end?
Yeah, this is where it gets a lot more subjective now, because like we're still young in like where we're in our second quarter of like this V3 of what we're doing, and this is where it's more of a conversations that there's clearly so the team isn't cheap, right? Like we're all like senior principal level resources they have on the team, and so like how do we justify the cost? And that's kind of a couple ways. One, we justify it by soft dollar cost savings. It's like, hey, you know what? If a customer did not take this, it causes like a pretty significant backlog of support tickets, and they can churn, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you start someone out dissatisfied, they're just gonna be pissed, right? Like, and they're gonna in the back of their head be like, I'll never want to renew with Harness again. I don't know who purchased this, or I know XYZ in that group purchased it. We'll never do business with that team again. Right. And like dissatisfaction is like a snowball. It keeps like rolling, and sometimes you get to the valley of despair that you can't get out. Like part of this is like cutting that off, saying, hey, you know what, you learn with us, let us teach you. You're getting 2 days with an architect, right? Like this is pretty substantial, and it's a pretty good, you'll be moving forward in your knowledge. And kind of similarly also, like there's also things that we can measure, like, hey, customer has time to value savings, because we charge for training. It's like, it's not free. And so we charge for it, and like, hey, customer needs to see more value than what they're paying, because then it's like, well, why do we pay you just more to not get any value? Right. And so we're seeing some increases there, saying, hey, you know what, we're getting more time to value. People who are agreeing to Harness, like this tooling always changes, and so like the people understand what it is to kind of start over, or like kind of like, oh, I got to learn the fundamentals again. They're picking up pretty quickly. Also, we're saving. Part of the cost savings when we analyze the business value calculation that we do for customers who are looking to kind of purchase this training is that sometimes they purchase professional services from us and saying, hey, you know what, we're accelerating that. Instead of at N number of $100 an hour that, let's say, Harsh in his previous capacity would go and say, hey, I'm a consultant, or I'm an architect, it's statement of work type of work, or hey, it's time and material. More time you spend with me, the more we get the bill. That's a lot more efficient now, because what ends up happening is like a core. This is more of like industry, what I've seen, like any part of these enterprise class toolings, a core set of people will purchase it. What ends up happening is that that core set of people, there's a learning curve. They will learn it, they will try to scale it out, but what ends up happening is that the core set of buyers become the bottleneck. And so the going joke I like to tell when I go and pitch to customers who are looking to purchase this, I usually join the sales call and say, hey, these are our training offerings. Some of them are free, some of them are paid. You can pick and choose any which one you want. But what resonates the most when they're like, oh yeah, we need to buy it, is I'll pretend that TJ is like an engineer at, so you were purchasing Harness, right, for Instruqt. You're in that position. And say, hey, you, the sole person at Instructor knows how to use our tool. You'll be in brown bag lunch and learns between now and like 2026 every week. If you're a company, so let's say Instructor had 10,000 people, right? That would be it. And they're like, we know that's going to happen. That we had it happen with the previous tool. I'm like, I had that happen to me too. And so that they're like nod their head like, yes, we need training to train like the second, like imagine the second ring of people who will be trained the trainer. That's where we get more success. I know that was kind of like little off topic, like how do we justify the cost and whatnot, but that's for this type of enterprise and development type of tooling, that's the truth. If we empathize heavily with the buyer and the user, saying that we've all been in your shoes in different tools, and I think that's the approach. That's the approach that our team has taken. It's been pretty successful. Like we empathize with the.
Well, I think the fact that Harness, addresses so many use cases within a company as well as so many teams, that going to market the way that you do is actually such a smart thing in the sense that you can show that you can help them onboard and transition teams onto it faster and be successful and get value from your investment. So I bet it's not too much of a jump for people to understand. Like if I buy Harness, I really do need a successful training and onboarding program really to take advantage of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Even the more I would say, like, it's funny. Like I always like dote on this, that when Harness is getting bigger too. Like when I first joined Harness, when you would search for Harness on Google, you would get a lot of like not safe for work results or dog harnesses, right? And it's like I couldn't tell my parents I worked for Harness. So like Google it, like, Ravi, what is this? It's like, and then you work for Cisco before? Like, why are you working here? And then the more sophisticated buyers that we have, like people are spending, bigger dollar. As we got bigger, our customers have gotten, our dollar deal sizes have gotten bigger too. And the level of rigor on those deal sizes have gotten a lot more. So the buyers are like, I've been involved probably in several RFPs now in the new role that's saying, hey, they have very detailed questions about your training. And it's like, yes, we have very good training. I'm very proud to say that we have, and also it's kind of it gets us to those levels of conversations. Like those conversations are happening more and more because we're closing bigger and bigger deals here at Harness, and like the level of rigor that the buyer of these companies have to go through is more and more. So like they want to make sure that, hey, Harness is not a fly by night operation. We plan to have a multi-year relation with Harness. Like training is important to that. And I had, with a top financial institution, even earlier last week they were like, we're a partner. We love that you have training, because some of our competitors have no training, right? Like in the same area. And like, we felt better buying from you because you had training involved. And so that's where we are.
That's phenomenal. And I think it's so worth the investment. So what do you say, Harsh? You ready to let's show this off live and get into see what it looks like?
Let's do it. So what I'm going to walk through is first like our experience within Instruqt that a student gets, right off the bat. As they log in, they get, assuming everybody's familiar with the interface of Instruqt, it's like a canned environment where you get all the things that you need as a student. So in my screen here, I'm showing off some of the things that are available as a brand new user that has just logged in and has started the lab. And they get out of the box a bunch of these 9 things that you see on the top of the panel, right? And this gives them a very native developer experience of all the tooling that they would need for that. So they have their slides. The slides go up and down. They have our own product that they need to be using during the training, and the corresponding ancillary tools like a container registry, a code repo, the monitoring tool, the app that will finally get deployed, a code editor, and then a terminal, right? So all this comes via the mechanisms that Instruqt allows us to provide with their virtual browsers and other capabilities. Then we have the big thing is like a ephemeral account that they get spun up. So like as soon as they log in, they can get a Harness account that they can log in and have an experience as if they are the administrators for that tenant that they are getting an account provisioned on. And in here, as you will see, like, the whole setup in this particular thing is about GitOps, which we're trying to teach as an example that I'm showing on my screen, is they need to understand how GitOps agents are getting installed. And so here on the right-hand side, you see like the power of in Instruqt with all their marked down on the right-hand side experience is super powerful, because I can just follow the instructions here and navigate with all the screenshot that is needed, that what I need to do on the tool. So, all right, I need to go and click on deployments and GitOps, and I'm right into where I need to do to set up the corresponding steps that are needed. So all the instructions are right there. Beyond that, if they want to, if we wanted to do a more automation and Terraform based approach, infrastructure as code based thing, we can just go to the corresponding instructions and run commands, and this will start provisioning the entire thing that they would have to typically do from a browser by clicking through. So this gives them the entire experience of what they would have if they wanted to do it like from an automated way in the tool. And this provides them confidence that there's not just a lot of clicking that they have to do, but it also allows them to get all the things provisioned via a programmatic approach. So this is just the output of what we just ran there. So this is the first part of what I wanted to show from what we're trying to do with the instructor-led experience. So there's a bunch of labs that they go through, as you can see on my screen here, that talks through the different things that the student will be guided through with an instructor like myself or my colleagues on the team. And once that is over, the next part of this is the student needs to go and take an exam, a certification test. And this is self-guided, and it's all controlled and scored automatically while using some of the APIs that we have. Is something already done by the student as the expected challenge required them to do. So this is using the Instruqt provided check scripts and setup scripts that we have. So this check is allowing us to go and validate what has been done by the student or not. So
this is pretty, just to interject, like, Harsh is showing here, like this was pretty substantial, because like this is actually, for folks who are not familiar with Instruqt, like this is on the backside of like what this, like the student would not see this. Like this is actually like the question and answer. Like they're doing something fairly technical. They're using something called Open Policy Agent, and using that inside a pipeline that Harness has. So it's like a fairly technical task that they're doing. And then we're able to grade that they did this, they were able to do this successfully by this particular check script that in part of the life cycle that Instruqt provides, that when they kind of correspond, when they go track to track, or like they're progressing through the exam here, is that we actually hit the Harness API. We query for several objects and see if like the objects are there. And that was like kind of our approach, that if object is there, I mean, all roads lead to this kind of data structure. So they would have gotten there. And this is crucial, like, because we're able to automatically grade what people do, is that we're able to scale multiple parts of the business. For example, our partner org, put their top of mind, because we've been dealing with them or like helping enable them a lot recently, is that we have a lot of folks in different geographies where we don't live, and they're trying to scale up in APAC, right? And it's like, hey, you know what? We have to get certification. If we had to do this without Instruqt, like certify people, we would have to fly Harsh. You might like this. Go to Singapore every couple of weeks. His daughter might not like him, but like he's like, I go to Singapore. But it's very, very pricey for us to do that. And like doing it over and over and over again, I might, Harsh might say, enough of this team. Like I'm sick of being in the air all the time. We're able to scale the business while all of us, right? Like, or that people are able to take it. Even other folks like who are more regional, people who are not on the team, are taking this and like saying, hey, you know what? Get yourself certified on this. We can have more business conversations with you, and this allows that to happen. Like business can occur at all times of day. It's not limited to when we're awake or when we're somewhere. So that's pretty. This is like that was one of my favorite parts. As a person who hates taking tests, they put me in charge of the certification.
For making the tests, yeah.
Yeah. It's like who has to guard the hen house and the fox? Like that's my mother would say that. Like it's like we made a really good experience, and like it's modern. It's it doesn't remind me of like the early 2000s taking a test, and it's and we meet the user where they are. They can be at home and take it. They can do it virtually. They can we have multiple ways, and even also like folks who might not have the means or resources. We have a free tier of our certifications, and so it helps. We're helping like raise the industry as a whole. And we're helping educate folks who just want to learn, and they can do it on their own time, which is a pretty substantial thing to say. I didn't mean to cut you off, Harsh. So I was just like, hey, this is the cool stuff here. Yeah.
All good.
Well, to your point too, the partner demand is sometimes different for customers as well, simply because it's a little bit sporadic. And to your point, it can happen anywhere in the world. So all of a sudden, having the ability to train your partners and get them certified quickly that's a pretty critical thing to be able to do.
I think
And
the main point over there is like, these are practitioners, right? Like the partners, especially,
yes,
they are like the pros of what they're doing, right? And we are giving them the ability to, it's not just blindly clicking through. Like they have to literally understand, like, how can I do this to solve a business problem that their customer is facing with
right.
the tool we have. So they can experiment, and we give them all the dependencies, so they don't have any kind of like, hey, I don't have access to XYZ to test this scenario out. With Kubernetes, if folks that are familiar with it, it comes with its own set of things that you need to have. And Instruct really, like, shines with that whole experience that provide with the embedded Instruct.
Well, to your point, right, Harsh, they have to solve it in the real world. So you go from, if you can create a training experience that's as close to real world as possible, that's actually kind of nice because they got to sit in front of a real customer at a bank and really implement your solution.
Exactly.
That's challenging. So I have to. So the questions are actually flowing in like we knew they would for the demo. What first and foremost, this always gets asked. What LMS platform are you using as part of your kind of go-to-market strategy for Harness University?
Yeah, we have a couple of tools that we use. So the site that we had in the slides, that's kind of like the first experience that people see as Harness University. So it's part of our developer portal. So it's part of like our developer to Harness.io offering. That's powered by a Meta or Facebook project called DocuSource. And so that is powered by DocuSource. It's a big TypeScript application, and it's good that it's a good thing that our team is pretty close with like the teams that manage that stuff, and so we can have a UI built a certain way. We can have graphics. We can have things that look visually appealing as we can grow as a company. Kind of when you our actual registration, like when you go and register for a class, it's kind of two-part. If it's totally hands off, you're not interacting with us, we use a firm called Skilljar. And so Skilljar is a registration site that we have. So it's university-registration.harness.io. And then the instructor-led portion or the hands-on portion is Instruqt, right? So the users get access when they register. They get a share link from Instruqt, which has protections that they're not using it like 1,000 times over and over, which is good. And then if there's a question and answer portion, so if there's like an actual test, like what you think is a traditional test, it's a company called Measure Learning or Cavion. Their product is called Scorpion, is what we use. So we use a combination of, for the certifications, it's a combination of Scorpion and Instruqt. For the instructor training, it's purely Instruqt at that point.
Thank you. This is actually a really good question. You've created several versions of your training program. What advice do you have to someone starting out? Like if you kind of had to talk to yourself 10 years ago, what would you say?
It's needed, right? Like it's always, it's a shift left mentality. Like we say a lot of that in the industry that Harsh and I are in, is that it used to be that, we used to do testing, like software testing. We used to do quality last. Or we used to do security last. We used to do documentation last. Well, all those things kind of get done around the same time. Ironically, like now with DevOps and platform engineering and all these modern movements in software, is they kind of get done along the same time. And because of Agile, they get done like around the same time where things are being made. Like, hey, we kind of document before release. As we're building the feature, we also like any software, like bigger software shop will try to self-document. We test, and like by the time the sprint is over or story points are exhausted, you have something that's shippable and people can use. The thing that's always forgotten, or I've seen forgotten, is education. Like it is one of the last bastions of what's on the not getting included at the time the feature's being built. Like education is typically like, it's been out there for a while. It's been out for 6 months. We need to teach people on it now. Or if other companies might skip over it, right? Like if you don't have the budget, or like kind of it's a mark of a more stable company to have education. Is that even we're trying to combat that now? Like how we run the team you would think you're on a scaled agile team or an agile team here, that we use all the tooling that software engineers use. We run things through Jira. We have epics. We try to be aligned when there's changes in the product. Like we need to go back and revamp some of the training. That was the biggest challenge we had in V1 and V2, was like, hey, our product changes fast. We're a SaaS. Like, sure. People innovate on us, and we provide innovation for them to innovate, and it changes fast. And we have 12 modules that are changing all fast. And so it's that's kind of the challenge. But we take it in stride, and we run it as a software team. We build a good backlog. We groom the backlog. All changes maybe not need to go in. We run it as a product team would. here at Harness. Yeah, that would be my advice. Like, hey, education is never static. That's the one. It's like software.
Yeah.
Like it's not static. So we continuously go back and modify things. I think one stat we had in terms of like in 365 days, we receive like 800 pieces of feedback. So we get like a couple pieces a day. Like we intake in a couple ways, and we made about 400 changes to source control on like changing this. And so it's like we read them all and we try to work them all. And it's like running a product. Some things are not valid. Some things are. Something you can take action on. Sometimes people are just pissed off because they didn't pass. You know, and like it's like take it in stride. Like I would have been pissed off too at that point. But it's education. It's not static, especially in technology. As technology changes, like we need to change. And also being current is challenging. So it is definitely like being in technology is always learning.
It's amazing. And again, I think you're right. Taking that kind of product mindset is probably the first key to success. So one of the things somebody asked, you brought up earlier that a key differentiator from your competition is training. So what's the cost of not doing training? Like how do you define that?
Yeah, I think it's always like a common business problem. Like what if we didn't do this, right? Like it's probably the business case when we're forming the team and then funding the team that we have folks who can easily be a post-sales engineer here, like pretty much anyone in the team. We had people on the team who were post-sales people, right? Like who come on the team. And so it's everybody gets a different experience. Like when training or when we had this, we package it in a certain way that we can go to 15 different customers and they would get 98 or 95% the same training over and over. Why? It's because we're in the room, like we will be consultative to a person, right? Saying, hey, we're human, you have a question, we'll try to answer it with like, well, what we've seen, what we've in our career, our kind of, additive careers that we've all had, like, hey, like, that's not a good idea. That's a good idea. Or like, hey, like, I don't know. We can ask someone for you if that's a good idea. But it is consistent, right? Like what would happen previously, it's a business risk that people have varying levels of background and skills on the teams here, which is absolutely fair. Like people are all different. And so if we have one architect go to one company, and then that person exhausts the hours and they purchase a year later and they come back, like they get a completely different experience. They're like, oh, so-and-so told us this. It's like, well, so-and-so is not here right now. So that's kind of that's kind of it, right? And it's like we're able. The risk of the business is that one, we can't be repetitive and we can't be consistent on how we educate people because it's like it's kind of left to the person in the room. Some people are good teachers. Some people just like to be in front of the keyboard, right? Like that. There's no harm in that. So we're much more consistent, and also it helps us like mentioned earlier was like, hey, like as we're getting into bigger these questions are showing up in every RFP. Like they're like, or RFI or purchase, kind of like investigation. What you have training, right? And it's like, instead of them going, yeah, we'll train you. It's like, yes, absolutely. Go to, the site. All of it's listed down. You can watch videos of them giving it. Like we took a very, very proactive approach to that. We take a very dev relationship type of approach that don't take our word for it. Like you crack it open and take a look at it. If you need to use it, come talk to us. If you like what you see, get it. If not, no, don't. We're very pragmatic on the team about that. So risk is that we couldn't scale as a business. Because a lot of what we're selling here at Harness is that, it's a lot of the market's still being created, right? And so like chaos engineering is a good example, or developer experience projects that we have, or we're even introducing like other type of products that the market is not. It's not like we're teaching like Linux, we're teaching things that are like still being created in the market. And so like that is also the challenge. And like we immediately legitimize ourselves more saying, you can get training in this like early adopter type of product that you're looking at. And that excites people like, oh, I don't have to worry about this. So I know the risk would be like the business would push forward as much as they can.
So we have a question, last question here came up in the chat. How do you connect product education with enablement and technical readiness? Is it even possible for these departments to collaborate at some level? I bet Harness actually, you probably are already kind of forcing some of that collaboration, I would imagine.
Yeah, a lot of it happens with our team. And so the biggest gap that I think with there's like the academia portion or instructional design. Yes, I was saying industrial design, instructional design. I was getting the wrong word. So sorry. So, there's sometimes a disconnect between And this is kind of like the stigma. Being totally blunt, we had a stigma here on the previous team. Like the folks who were very strong in instructional design, they have very, very valid and crucial skill sets. There's a disconnect between them and what the practitioner needs to learn, right? Like we're teaching engineering software. We're not teaching something out of it could be out of a book, but that book takes decades to learn. And like if you like, so boating the two is what we did in the team. Like the person, there's another person who's not here is Kendra, and so I know TJ and Kendra know each other pretty well.
Yep.
She's kind of like she's the head program manager for all education here at Harness, and she has both of those skill sets. She has a strong instructional design or background, and also she came from a competitor who lucky we got her in the same industry, and so. We had to fill the gaps, right? Like I think like in the seesaw, it kept going back and forth. Like we had a lot of strong technical people, but they hated the training part. Then it went the other way. We had a lot of great people who can train, but they had no technical skill or lack of technical skills. And now we're like more at equilibrium. Like, hey, we the bar is high. It's in the ground level seesaw. We're like, like get vertigo, like if you're in a high seesaw, but we blend the two teams together. So like most education enablement, it's flowing out of our team, and then other teams can kind of pick up on it if they need. So it's a good example is like our partner. Again, I keep saying partner all the time. Like our internal enablement and partner enablement teams are different than us, but they're just basically taking, like for the technical part that they would have the gap on, we're fulfilling that. And then they're able to say, you know what, we need to display the information this way, or hey, you know what, there's other soft skills we have to teach people. We'll teach them that. And then kind of the more technical, like the hardware skills, we'll fill out your team. And the student has a great experience after that. So I'm not sure if I saw the question too. I'm not sure if I answered that question to.
I think that was pretty good.
To the person's desire, but hope that helped.
Well, that's it. That's time. So, Harsh and Ravi, thank you so much. This is really great today. I appreciate your time and insights. We actually have a couple questions too that came in at some point that we'll be following up with afterwards. We'll be sending out the links and sending that out as well. So thank you everybody who joined us today, and we appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Cheers.
Have a nice day.
All right. Have a good rest of the day.